Now, you'll remember last week's Human Rights Commission report that found the pollution in the Vaal River was so extreme that it not only compromises the ecology of the system, but also infringes on the human rights of people who live in the area. Well, now to another river under severe pollution pressure, but some good news. The Jukskei runs through Johannesburg, and while it is beautiful in parts and a place for families to walk and enjoy nature, in other parts it is polluted and even dangerous. But now that is changing because of two women who started a community project to revive the Jukskei and also create a green corridor through the city. To tell us more, I'm joined by Conservationist Romy Stander, who along with artist Hannelie Coetzee kickstarted the idea. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm completely fascinated by this idea because it's not just a river cleanup, which is great anyway. It's also art and a whole lot of concepts coming together to revive parts of the Jukskei. Just tell us how it all began.
Hi, thanks so much for having me this evening, and hi to the viewers. Basically, when I started, I was extremely naive, and I realized that it was a complete can of worms. And so I Googled any information I could find on the Jukskei, and I came across a very interesting article written by Sean Christie that was published in the Mail and Guardian. It was titled "Searching for the Soul of the Jukskei." And in that article, he referred to Paul Farrell, who was a water activist and head of the chairman of the Jukskei River Committee. So I went to go visit him in his old age home, and he was wheelchair bound because of all the years of wading through toxic rivers. And it was thanks to his expert guidance that he put together a group of scientific experts from around the country and advised that we would need to have a separate set of data that could be referenced alongside the city's records to understand the status quo. And so the cost of all those reports I presented to the funders, which were Group 44 that owned 44 Stanley and Victoria Yards, and the Nando's head office. And they funded the seed money I needed to just start to commission the reports. Hannelie at the same time had been exploring all the different spraits around Johannesburg and speaking to people who lived along these spraits. And she made a beautiful series of gravitures on how can I say, disused, like old doors and all these portraits of the people that she met along the spraits. And her and I just started this journey together, and it's really been quite a journey.
And I know that you're now pulling other people into it. You've also got communities who live along the Jukskei involved. I'm just wondering which part of the Jukskei you've been concentrating on, and what did you have to clean up and change?
Well, it's very interesting and quite serendipitous, I feel, because of where we located and where we decided to start working. It's the daylight point of the Jukskei, meaning the first time that the river comes up and sees the air or the light. And various eyes of the Jukskei exist around the Ellis Park area, or aquifers. Some people also know about the fact that a lot of the basements of buildings around the Doornfontein area are actually constantly flooded, and they are pumping out the water 24/7. So we refer to the area as the Upper Jukskei, and the pilot study area is sort of a block down from the Ellis Park Stadium, and then it daylights on Queen Street in Lorentzville, and then it travels in a culvert or canal all the way along to Bruma. It goes via Alex.
It's so extensive. It really is. Tell us about the kind of cleanup work you had to do, because there are parts of the Jukskei and Joburg that are really beautiful, but you were focusing on the areas that have got like really terrible sewage, pollution. Tell us how difficult that cleanup was.
Well, you know, where we're at now, it's really been a very science and data-driven experiment, like learning of where to start and how to just go about the remediation. Because literally on a molecular level, it's toxic off the charts. And there's three focus areas, and the one is, in the major program we've just undertaken, is an alien invasive plant removal, which was we started last year and we've literally just finished today. Then we also have ongoing monitoring. I had a monitoring station sponsored by a couple of sponsors. SRK Consulting and Campbell Scientific. And our next focus area is the sustainable urban drainage systems that we'll be implementing around the area with rainwater harvesting.
It's so
technologies, rain gardens, bioswales. But if you had to go walk there now, at the daylight point, for example, people throw in building rubble, stripped cables, TVs, dead dogs. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it smells to high heavens, and it changes color depending on what's flowing on it, and especially with these massive downpours we've had in the last while. Everything that's in the streets, because we're also based in this catchment, and the other part that's very interesting is that we as Johannesburgers are intercontinental polluters. So everything that flows in this river from this point ends up in Shai, Mozambique, and the Indian Ocean. And you can imagine if it's so bad to start out with, what is it like by the time it gets to the oceans?
Wow, I mean, this is completely fascinating, and clearly it's an ongoing project, and all credit to you and your team for doing such important work, and there's a way to go still, and I hope that we have you back and you can give us updates. But just reinforcing how crucial looking after our rivers is, because it's the veins that run through the bodies of our communities. Thank you so much. Conservationist Romy Stander talking about the project to clean up and beautify the Jukskei River